The story you're about to hear is a compilation of documented true facts about historical characters, events, or locations. Please sit back and listen as I narrate this story to you. Project Stargate was a multi-million-dollar program run by the CIA during the Cold War to try to stay ahead of the Soviet Union in terms of mental powers. This program investigated reading someone's thoughts, telepathy, predicting the future, and the ability to view a location or time remotely while not physically present. The project, as well as its predecessors and sister projects, were known by various code names: Gondola Wish, Stargate, Grill Flame, Center Lane, Project CF, Sunstreak, Scanate, until 1991 when they were consolidated and renamed Stargate Project. The CIA, Army, and Defense Intelligence Agency recruited men and women claiming to have extrasensory perception powers, or ESP, to help uncover military and domestic intelligence secrets in a highly classified project conducted first in a California research lab in the 1970s and later at an Army base in Maryland. The origins of Project Stargate can be traced back to 1972, when a classified report made headlines in the US military and intelligence communities by alleging that the Soviet Union was funding ESP and psychokinesis research for espionage purposes. According to the New York Times, Soviet research concentrated on alleged psi particles, which were described as the physical basis for psychic energy. Older research, documented in unconventional research in the USSR and Russia, a brief overview, seemed to imply that these psi particles and psychic energy in general actually radiated out from a person capable of displaying psychic powers. The setup for a particular experiment from the 1930s looked exactly like something out of a physics lab: a lead box at one end of a pipe holding a radiation source and a sensor at the other end of the same pipe, except that the source of the radiation was a psychic or hypnotist and the sensor was another human. To cut a long story short, the experiment appears to have demonstrated that this psychic energy behaves similarly to any other source of electromagnetic radiation, such as light, diffracting and responding to mirrors placed in the picture. It even had its own wavelength of about 2 millimeters. The catalyst for the psychic arm race was Nina Kulagina. Kulagina began her career as a housewife, then as a member of the Red Army. All in all, nothing out of the ordinary. But by the 1960s, she piqued the interest of Soviet scientists who wanted to put her psychic abilities to the test. That resulted in a slew of very interesting videos of her alleged telekinetic abilities. According to Encyclopedia.com, she was seen moving small objects with her mind, such as pens, matchsticks, and cigarettes. She even demonstrated having the ability to move a compass needle simply by placing her hand over it. She is said to have been able to physically stop a frog's heart from beating. After 20 minutes of preparation, Kulagina's own heart rate increased dramatically right around the time the frog heart suddenly stopped beating. Her next subject was a Soviet scientist who didn't believe in her abilities. Both were hooked up to an EKG, and in no time, the researcher's heart rate had increased to dangerous levels, forcing the experiment to be terminated. Those videos quickly made their way back to the United States, and officials wondered what kind of war they would have to prepare for. With the introduction of potential psychic weapons, the United States was determined not to fall behind in this new arms race, and a new program was instituted to ensure their dominance in the field: Project Stargate. The CIA began funding its own top-secret research, which was based at the Stanford Research Institute in Menlo Park, California. Late that year, Yuri Geller, an ex-Israeli paratrooper who had become internationally famous for his psychic abilities, was invited to Menlo Park for testing by the SRI research team. Though Geller was best known for his alleged ability to bend metal cutlery with his mind, the CIA was far more interested in another of his claimed abilities: the ability to read other people's minds and even control them with his own. As Annie Jacobson writes in her book Phenomena: The Secret History of the US Government's Investigations into Extrasensory Perception and Psychokinesis, the declassified documents show that CIA analysts wanted to probe Geller's abilities in the area of mind projection and its possible use for national security purposes. According to Jacobson, Geller was instrumental in initiating the US government's investigation into ESP and psychokinesis. Geller even took part in a series of classified psychokinesis tests in the winter of 1975, she writes, at a lab in Livermore, California, where scientists were developing advanced nuclear warheads, laser systems, and other emerging weapons technologies. Geller was locked in a room for 8 days in August 1973 while the CIA conducted various experiments on him to test his supernatural abilities. Geller's ability to see hidden drawings, find buried metal, and bend spoons with his mind was put to the test in these experiments. The CIA concluded that Geller had demonstrated his paranormal perceptual ability in a convincing and ambiguous manner as a result of his success during this experimental period. Geller was isolated in a room and told a picture had been drawn in one CIA experiment. He then drew a picture of a square with diagonal lines drawn through it. The apparent success of Geller piqued the interest of the United States Department of Defense. Following the CIA's initial test on Geller, University of Oregon's psychology professor, Ray Hyman, was asked to visit the SRI and personally evaluate Geller. After meeting with and evaluating Geller, Hyman came to the conclusion that Geller was a fraud, and he was able to easily spot the loopholes and inconsistencies in Geller's acts that Russell Targ and Harold Puthoff had apparently missed. In the late 1970s, the CIA discontinued its work with ESP and the program was transferred to the United States Army's Fort Meade in Maryland, where it was funded by the Defense Intelligence Agency. Congress continued to approve funds for the remote viewing program for the better part of the next 2 decades. The location of a Soviet plane that had crashed in the Democratic Republic of the Congo was by far the most successful case of the Operation Grill Flame. Rosemary Smith, a young woman working on the program, was given a map and marked a precise location where she believed the plane had crashed. Following that, map technicians converted her notation into geographical coordinates, which were then sent to the CIA station chief in Zaire. The Soviet plane was found 2 days later using the coordinates provided by Rosemary Smith, and the CIA was able to recover valuable technology from the downed aircraft. Among the remote viewers who worked with the government's top-secret program was Army veteran Joseph Mcmunigal. He was dubbed Remote Viewer Number 1. From 1978 to 1984, he was a member of Project Stargate and participated in over 450 missions. Mcmunigal specialized in near-death experiences, out-of-body travel, and UFOs. A typical day at work, according to Mcmunigal, entailed being handed envelopes and asked to provide information about whatever was inside. He also assisted the army in locating hostages in Iran and directed CIA agents to a shortwave radio hidden in the pocket calculator of a suspected KGB agent apprehended in South Africa. Mcmunigal's 1984 trip to Mars was one of the most bizarre experiments he was involved in. Mcmunigal was given a sealed envelope containing the information the planet Mars, with the time of interest being 1 million years BC during the experiment. Mcmunigal reported seeing very large, thin people wearing some kind of strange clothes, obelisks, and pyramids without knowing what was inside the envelope. When he discovered what was inside the envelope, Mcmunigal was convinced that he had actually traveled back in time to Mars. Angela Dellafiora Ford, another remote viewer, was asked in 1989 to assist in the capture of a former customs agent who had gone on the run, as she recently recounted on the CBS News program 48 Hours. Even though U.S. Customs was apprehending him 100 miles west of Lovell, Wyoming, she was able to pinpoint the man's location as Lowell, Wyoming. Even as details of the government's experiments leaked out in the 1980s, the Pentagon continued to deny publicly that it was spending money on any kind of psychic research. Finally, in 1995, the CIA released a report conducted by the Independent American Institutes for Research that confirmed the United States government's long-rumored work with remote viewing for military and intelligence purposes. The report also declared Stargate a failure, claiming that the existence of a paranormal phenomenon, remote viewing, has yet to be demonstrated. Though the analysts acknowledged that some trials were successful and that something beyond the statistical hiccups is taking place, they concluded that any information provided by remote viewing was vague and ambiguous and did not produce actionable intelligence. The program's cancellation that year did not signal the end of the government's interest in psychic phenomena. According to Jacobson, the Office of Naval Research launched a 4-year program costing approximately $3.85 million in 2014 to investigate the use of premonition or intuition among sailors and Marines, what is commonly referred to as a sixth sense or even spidey sense, in honor of the web-throwing superhero. Dr. Edwin May, the former Stargate research director, has continued to advocate for ESP as a legitimate tool for military and domestic intelligence long after the program was terminated. May told Newsweek in 2015 that his most recent ESP study, which was funded by the nonprofit Biel Foundation, is probably the best experiment in the history of the field. The CIA declassified approximately 12 million pages of records detailing previously unknown aspects of Project Stargate in 2017. The program was mentioned in the 2004 book and the subsequent 2009 film, both titled The Man Who Stared at Goats, though Project Stargate was not mentioned by name. By the time the program was terminated in 1995, psychics, known as remote viewers, had participated in a wide range of operations, from locating hostages kidnapped by Islamic terrorist groups to tracking down fugitive criminals within the United States. Whatever its application for espionage, belief in the powers of ESP has a long history of popular support among ordinary Americans, according to a 2005 Gallup poll. 73% of Americans at the time believed in some kind of paranormal phenomenon, with 41% believing in ESP specifically. While Project Stargate failed, its core beliefs are still widely held. Hey everyone! I just wanted to express how grateful I am that you took time out of your day to listen to my narration. This is Nikki of Twysted Mind, and I'd like to wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Salamat!